It's safe to say that Red Bull is dominating the 2023 season with a wide margin, having established itself in first place with a gap of almost double the points of Mercedes, which ranks #2 on the constructors' rankings. Of course, credit goes to their cutting-edge modifications and talented drivers, but that doesn't mean the team is without any problems. So let's address the elephant in the room and talk about the glaringly obvious difference between Red Bull Racing's two drivers, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. There is no doubt that Verstappen's achievements are truly amazing, especially since he broke Sebastian Vettel's 10-year-old record of 9 wins in a row with his 10th consecutive win in the Italian GP last Sunday. But still, it is clear that no other team shows such blatant favoritism and takes care that both drivers are offered equal opportunities. Teams such as Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren tend to treat their drivers fairly, while Red Bull doesn't mind overshadowing Perez at all. This approach hinders the development of a healthy team dynamic and often results in a weakened overall performance as well. There have been rumors floating around that Perez might not go for a contract extension with Red Bull, and also about Red Bull planning to court drivers like Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. But the Dutch GP on August 26th thoroughly cemented the fact that both Red Bull isn't considering Checo for a long-term partnership. Starting at the Zandvoort from P7, Checo's performance was quite impressive, especially when he made the right call to pit early on in the race and switched to intermediate tyres. This move propelled him to P1, even overtaking Max Verstappen himself. But what happened next was quite puzzling. A few laps later, it was time to switch back to slicks, and Red Bull made the controversial call to pit Max first, even though he was running second to his teammate. Instead of letting Checo capitalize on his excellent tyre strategy, Red Bull opted for an undercut on him, which eventually allowed Verstappen to win the GP on his home track for the 3rd consecutive year. Although team principal Christian Horner admitted that this decision carried the risk of Verstappen jumping in front of Perez, he still described this move as a no-brainer, saying that they needed to protect Verstappen against Alonso and Gasly anyhow. Another reason for Sergio losing time was that he had been informed of incoming rain, and since his tyres weren't ready, he had no choice but to slow down and opt for a 10-second pit stop delay. But the bizarre part is that every other player was told that it would be a short shower, because of which they decided to manage on slicks without having to pit. And as if that wasn't enough, Checo's race took a significant hit when he went off track at turn 1. To make matters worse, he was called into the pit stop when the red flag was displayed, losing 2 crucial places and ultimately finishing in 4th position. It's no secret that Max Verstappen is their golden boy, but this preference sometimes comes at the cost of Checo Perez. There's a recurring theme of Max being prioritized in terms of strategy, pit stops, and overall team support. Perez, on the other hand, often seems relegated to the role of a secondary choice, as it's clear that Perez has consistently struggled to catch up to Max, especially considering this year's overall performance. After starting off strong at Jeddah and Baku and bagging some well-executed wins, Perez has been sabotaged for most of the season. Given Checo's track record as a proven Grand Prix winner, this is something that even Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff can't explain. In the middle of the season, there were also accusations that Red Bull had designed the modifications with its focus on Verstappen. Early in the season, the Red Bull car had more understeer, which suited Perez, while Verstappen believed this limited his corner entry. As the car evolved, becoming more responsive to aero load and weight distribution, Verstappen benefited from a shift toward oversteer as it favored his driving style, giving him an edge over Perez. Helmut Marko has dismissed any claims about preferences dictating these changes. At the beginning of 2022, the car suffered a lot of understeer. This was due to the car being overweight. In the long run, you will not be successful with an overweight car, but as the car became lighter, the car went more to a neutral balance, or even a bit more oversteer. As another point of view, some say that if Red Bull was confident in Perez's abilities to hold on to his lead at Zandvoort and secure a flawless victory, they might not have shifted their priorities onto Verstappen. Let's check out this weekend's Italian Grand Prix as an example which will remain etched in the fans' minds, but Perez remembers it for all the wrong reasons. As Verstappen approached the brink of Formula One history right in Ferrari's home territory, they made it clear that they wouldn't be making it easy on him right from the first practice session by fitting the SF23 with a streamlined rear wing designed for maximum speed. They relied on Ferrari's expertise to keep Verstappen at bay, and this strategy paid off during qualifying, with Sainz narrowly edging out Verstappen by a mere 0.013 seconds to secure pole position. Sainz, despite the immense pressure, held his ground during the initial 14 laps of the race. However, a lap later, Verstappen took the lead and didn't relent, securing the position on Ferrari's home turf. But unlike the Dutch prodigy, it was anything but a smooth ride for Checo Perez. In fact, the Mexican's drive to second place was a real struggle after his weekend got off to a rocky start with a crash in Friday practice. And if that wasn't enough, an oil leak issue on Saturday limited his practice laps before qualifying. It truly seemed like the odds were stacked against him, and he openly acknowledged a race-altering choice that added unnecessary difficulty to his day at the Monza circuit. At the starting line of the Italian Grand Prix, the strategists at Red Bull sent a clear signal for him to make an early pit stop before the front-runners, aiming to execute an undercut. The objective was straightforward: pit early, get fresh tyres, and possibly emerge ahead of Mercedes' George Russell to secure a more advantageous track position. However, fueled by the intensity of the race and the high-stakes competition, Perez chose to disregard the team's directive and remained on the track, attempting to defeat Russell through his racing skills rather than relying on a pit stop strategy. This choice was a risky one that eliminated the possibility of executing an undercut. As he said after the race, "Then the team sent me in, and I decided to stay out to try and avoid Russell's undercut. Maybe if I had listened to the team, everything would have been easier." Despite the race's challenges and his self-acknowledged mistake, Perez demonstrated remarkable resilience, ultimately securing the second position, trailing only behind his teammate. Still, his flaky performance throughout the season and Perez's unwillingness to follow the strategy, which can be interpreted as arrogance, might be the reason why Red Bull is so keen to protect Verstappen's track positions. After all, with Red Bull poised to become the first team to win every single race in an F1 season, the stakes are even higher. Horner dismissed any claims about favoritism by saying that they don't have a single dollar to gain, no matter which of the two wins the Drivers' Championship. He said, "In F1, you've got two championships. The Constructors' Championship, which is where the money is distributed, whether the money flowing into the sport which Stefano Domenicali, F1 CEO, pays out on. So, from a team point of view, what we want to do is to make sure we give them both equality, and we go to pains to do that, to the point that we, even from weekend to weekend, alternate who pulls out the garage first, or who talks in the debrief alternates." Right before the Italian Grand Prix, Hamilton cast doubt on Perez's accomplishments and superiority. "In my personal opinion, all my teammates have been stronger than the teammates Max has had." In doing so, Hamilton unintentionally demeaned Sergio Perez. While this could have potentially strained the relationship between Perez and Verstappen, all it did was justify Red Bull's preference for the Dutch driver. Although it seems like Red Bull is hell-bent on making Verstappen their star player, maybe Checo hasn't displayed sufficient performance this year to instill Red Bull with confidence that he would thrive with a favourable strategy. What do you think? A lot will be revealed with the contract negotiations after this season, but in the meantime, we can only speculate.